I'm going to go over the syntax and the different types of styles and try to explain what their role is and why you would use the different types. You would use all four types at one point or another. The tag style is basically if you wanted to apply a style to a certain HTML tag throughout the entire site. This would be what you would say is your default style options for a particular tag. So in this case, what I'm using is the H1 tag. So if I wanted to create an H1 tag style, what I would do is I would basically type out the name of the tag, in this case H1, and that's it. There's no character in front of it. So I would type out H1 and then color, and then this hexadecimal value is a greenish color. I would type that out, and then all my H1 tags would automatically have that color applied to it throughout the site that is attached to this style. Now, if you wanted to sort of have a diversion from that, you would create something called a class style. Now, in this particular case, let's say for default purposes, I want all my H1 tags to be blue, but in some cases, I want them to be green. And so what I would do is I would create a class style. Now, the class style syntax has a dot in front of it. So if I said dot green, then I would have a class style, and it would only be applied as if when I created an H1 tag that would then have the class equals green. Now, careful in the HTML part of it, you would not put the dot in. It would be class equals quotes green unquote. And then you can see that at the bottom of, when you download this table, you can see examples at the bottom of the table of how to apply the HTML portion of it. So in that particular case, if I said class equals green, then that will turn the H1 tag green. Now, the ID style type works exactly the same way as the class, but the syntax has a pound sign instead of a dot. Now, the reason why you would use an ID style as opposed to a class style is because you would generally only apply an ID style to one element in the page. The reason being is because ID stands for identifier, and you can't have two objects with the same identifier because otherwise you can't target one of them because you don't know which one is the target. So in that particular case, now you would usually use an ID style for a layout object. So let's say, for instance, I create a header in my web page, and within the header I'm going to have an area called green title. That means that only in the header will this object exist, and what I'm going to do is, since that's a pound sign and it's an ID style, then that means that it only exists once per page. Now, generally speaking, the reason you would do this is it gets into more programming aspects, like let's say you want your header, your green title, to slide in from the left. So you could apply a JavaScript, and to apply JavaScript, you have to apply it to a singular object. So then I would apply it to green title, and I'd say start, left of the page, and then when you come into the page, move to the right. And if I applied it to green title and I had more than one, then I'd have more than one object moving on the stage. So that's kind of the idea behind why you would use an ID instead of a class. The last type is a compound style, and that generally involves two or more elements. And what this is generally for is to target certain elements within certain areas of your page. Now, the syntax for this is basically the syntax that we talked about the other style types, but then you're going to add them together. So the situation that I created here is I have a green title area it would probably be div equals ID equals green title. And within that object, that area, I'd have an h1 tag. And then that style, this particular style, would only be directed towards that h1 element that's nested inside the green title area. This is really useful for tags with multiple attributes like an A tag, because an A tag has many different states. It has a hover state, a visited state, and an active state. And so it really works a lot easier to target those kinds of elements if they're inside a certain element. So it would be something like green title A hover. It would only apply to those A tags and not any other A tags outside. So again, the syntax for that would be first, the first style, in this case green title, space, and then the second style tag, or the second element. So green title space h1 means that the h1 in the green title area is going to have the color green applied to it in this particular case. All right, so you have to know this syntax. That's the important part of this. That's why you need to get this, you just have to memorize it. There's no other way you can get around it. So I'm going to open up Dreamweaver now and show you how this all works. Okay, so what I have here on the page is I have a header 1 tag. By the way, this is Dreamweaver CC 2014. If you're following along, it doesn't look quite the same, then you probably have Dreamweaver CC. CC in 2014 have minor differences, so it doesn't matter which one you're using. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a tag style. So I go over to my CSS designer, and I look down, and there's my selectors. So when I first opened up CC, I was really lost in this particular case because I kept on trying to click selectors, and I just couldn't get in there. It's all grayed out, and so I really couldn't figure out. It's like, what's going on here? And then I realized that before you can create a style, you have to determine where it's going to be. So if you go all the way up to the top of your designer panel, you'll see something called sources. And now that plus sign is no longer grayed out. And if I click the plus sign, I'll see that I have 3 options. Create a new CSS file, attach existing CSS file, or define in page. If I create a new CSS file, that means that I'm creating a new external style sheet, which we'll talk about later on. And and that would be applied to multiple pages, so that if I put this h1 style in that external style sheet and I updated it, it would update all the h1s on all pages. And that's why you'd want to do an external style sheet. If I had already created an external style sheet and I wanted to attach it, I would then choose Attach Existing CSS File. And that would look something like this in your code. Link href, and then I would click Browse, and then I would browse for the style sheet, and then it would go into that area over there, and that would automatically apply the style sheet. I don't have that created, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to define in page. That means that the style is going to be only on this page. Now, the advantage to that, when you have an entire website, is that when you define something in a page, then it won't be applied for the entire site. So if it was only going to be applied to this particular page and no other page, that's when you'd want to use it. For learning purposes, I find it's also easier to work with one page, because then you don't have to go back and forth through multiple pages. So I'm going to create define in page. Once I've defined that, you'll see that the style tag has been created, style type equals text CSS, and then close style tag. And then now I can go down here. The @media is for responsive design, or what type of device we're gonna be looking at here. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. But I'm going to go down to selectors. Now, one of the things that I first started off as, oh, here's a field to click in. I'm going to type H1, but this is a search field. It's searching for styles that are already created. And guess what? No styles have been created. So when I hit enter, nothing happens. So you have to click the plus sign. I think Adobe could have done a little bit better in their intuitive design here, because that really threw me too. So selectors, plus sign. Here, now you've got another field is where you type in your tag style. And once I create that tag style, you have to hit enter maybe a couple of times. Then you get your layout panel. And your layout panel looks like this. Your style designer panel. Your layouts, your text, your borders, and your backgrounds. Dreamweaver, the folks at Adobe decided to kind of group them together in those categories. Though, however, you can also just scroll and you'll get the entire panel attributes as well. In this particular case, I'm only dealing with text and I'm only dealing with color. So I'm going to set the color here, and let's start with blue. I'm going to say that all my H1s are going to be blue. This is a new color palette. It used to look a lot different. It's harder to get web safe colors. I guess Adobe just thought we don't have to worry about web safe colors anymore. So now we go to very, very specific colors. And I like to use the hexadecimal value. If you wanted to deal with transparency, you use the RGB, and this will add the A, which is the alpha, and then you can pull that alpha down to whatever percentage value you want. That's for transparency. That's a very cool feature now. If you can see, though, RGB has all these different numbers, whereas hexadecimal has a much more manageable number. So if you're not dealing with a transparency, I'd recommend hexadecimal. I'm going to hit return, and boom, H1, all my H1 tags have now this style applied to it because that is a tag style. Now, I'm going to create another style. This time, click the plus sign, go down here, and I'm going to call it .green. You do have to put the dot in there. That's what throws me a lot, because back in the old Dreamweaver days, I just said class, boom, there's your dot. Now you have to type it in yourself. Hit return. This time I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select the text area, and I'm going to select the color, and I'm going to slide up to green. Again, I'm just using some random green color. There's my hexadecimal value, and I'm going to hit return. And as you can see, that does nothing to the color of